On a dark Halloween night, the narrow streets of Windrow were filled with children collecting candy. The air was chilly, and the wind rustled through the leaves. 12-year-old Lila Harper, wearing her Halloween mask with her friends, shouted joyfully, "Trick or treat!" But suddenly, Lila's best friend, Finn, vanished as he approached the dark entrance of one of the houses. The others searched for him, calling out, but Finn seemed to have disappeared into thin air. Hours later, the townspeople found him on the street the next morning, unable to remember anything. His face was expressionless, and his eyes held a fear that words couldn't describe. The next night, something similar happened. Lila passed by an old, broken street lamp on the corner where Finn had disappeared, and the shadows seemed to move on their own. "It feels like someone's watching me," she whispered. Meanwhile, other children began to vanish again. In the narrow streets of Casper Alley, it was as if an invisible force was pulling them away one by one. Yet the next morning, no one remembered anything. They just clung to each other, crying, their faces etched with strange lines and a terrifying emptiness. Lila sought help from the town's elderly librarian, Mr. Aaron. With a heavy voice, she told an old legend. For centuries, Windrow has been haunted. On Halloween night, the lost masks come. They take innocent children and erase their memories, but they do not let them go. All that remains are empty eyes and fearful souls. Lila's hair stood on end. Mrs. Dalloway told her to go to the abandoned old monastery in town and destroy the mask, but everyone knew no one ever returned. Summoning her courage, Layla walked toward the monastery at midnight. The wind howled, doors slammed on their own, and shadows danced along the walls. Inside, the monastery glowed with an eerie light. Moonbeams through cracks in the ceiling made the old frescoes look horrifyingly alive. Suddenly, Lila saw masks scattered on the floor. They had been brought from the streets where the children disappeared. The masks were almost alive, their eyes staring at her and whispering, "Trick or treat." As Lila bent down to grab one of the masks, darkness enveloped her. Voices, whispers, and anguished screams of the children echoed from every corner of the monastery. She hurried to destroy the mask. As it shattered, the children's spirits were briefly freed, sending a wave of screams across the town. The next morning, Lila was found in the town square, but her eyes were hollow, as if a part of her had remained in the monastery. From that day on, every Halloween in Windrow, children would disappear, remember nothing the next morning, and the town would fall silent with a chilling stillness. The last words whispered by the masks lingered in everyone's ears. Trick or treat. We only understand once the game is over. The old-timers in Oak Haven had a name for it, the Whisperer's Moon. It was a rare Halloween blue moon, a celestial event that hadn't graced their small New England town in a century. Legend had it that under its eerie sapphire glow, the jack-o'-lanterns became confessors, their flickering candlelight drawing out the darkest secrets from anyone who dared to walk past. For Sarah, it was just a silly superstition, a ghost story told to spook the kids. But as she walked home from her shift at the diner, the town felt different. The air was unnaturally still, and the blue moon cast long, skeletal shadows that danced like specters in her peripheral vision. Every porch on every house was adorned with grinning, leering pumpkins, their orange light a stark contrast to the ethereal blue that bathed the world. That's when she saw Mr. Abernathy, the town's sweet elderly librarian, kneeling in his garden. His back was to her, but she could see his shoulders shaking as he whispered to a fat, lopsided pumpkin. She smiled, thinking it was a quaint, if eccentric, Halloween tradition. But as she drew closer, a few of his words drifted to her on the silent air. Never found the body, buried it deep under the old oak. Sarah froze, the smile sliding off her face. It couldn't be Mr. Abernathy, who read stories to children and always had a Werther's original in his pocket. The thought was so absurd she almost laughed, but the tremor in the old man's voice was real, raw, and laced with a fear that sent a shiver down her spine. The jack-o'-lantern's carved smile seemed to widen, its flame flickering as if in amusement. She hurried on, her heart hammering against her ribs. It was a joke, a prank, that had to be it. But a few blocks later, she saw it again. A young woman, maybe a college student, was crouched by a row of pumpkins on the steps of a fraternity house. She was sobbing, her words a choked, desperate litany. Told them I was fine, that I wanted it, but he wouldn't stop. The woman's confession was a torrent of pain and shame, a secret she had locked away, now pouring out into the hollow gourd. The other jack-o'-lanterns on the porch seemed to lean in, their jagged mouths agape as if hungry for her misery. Sarah felt a wave of nausea. This wasn't a prank. This was real. The blue moonlight seemed to thicken, the world taking on a dreamlike, or rather nightmarish, quality. The faces carved into the pumpkins began to warp and twist. A cheerful grin would morph into a malevolent sneer, a comical wink into a knowing, accusatory glare. Sarah felt a strange, insidious pull towards a particularly grotesque pumpkin, with a gaping maw and triangular eyes that burned with an unnatural intensity. A secret of her own, one she had buried for years, began to surface in her mind, a venomous whisper in the back of her skull. She broke into a run, her boots pounding on the pavement. She had to get home, away from the pumpkins and their silent, insatiable hunger. She ducked into a narrow alley, a shortcut she had taken 1,000 times, but tonight it was a tunnel of horrors. Both walls were lined with jack-o'-lanterns, dozens of them, their eyes following her as she ran. The whispers were all around her now, a cacophony of sin and sorrow. They were no longer coming from people, but from the pumpkins themselves. "I know you can hear us, Sarah. We know your secret." Her own dark truth was a scream in her throat, clawing its way out. The memory she had suppressed for so long, the one that woke her up at night, slick with sweat, the car accident. The other driver, a young mother, dead at the scene. And Sarah, who had been texting, who had looked up a second too late. She had let her father take the blame, his career ruined, his life shattered. She burst out of the alley and onto her own street. Her house was just ahead, a beacon of safety in the terrifying blue night. But as she stumbled up the porch steps, her blood ran cold. There, by her front door, was the jack-o'-lantern she had carved that afternoon. She had given it a silly, lopsided grin and big, round eyes. But now, under the Whisper's moon, it was the most terrifying thing she had ever seen. The urge to confess was a physical force that drove her to her knees. She scrambled to her feet and threw herself inside, slamming the door behind her. Leaning against it, she collapsed to the floor, her body trembling, her breath coming in broken sobs. She was safe. The pumpkin whispered, "It's okay, Sarah. You can tell me. I'll keep your secret. We'll all keep it." And from the living room, the kitchen, every corner of her house, a chorus of whispered voices answered, "We'll all keep it," Sarah screamed. The whispers were no longer just outside. They were inside the house with her. They were everywhere,